I'm going to a lot today. I can already tell that. Joe, I have a couple of responses to what you had to say. I'm going to put them in two pieces just because I think otherwise it's going to get long and weighty. And some people are more interested in one part of this, and some people are going to be more interested in another part. So let's do this in a two-part thing here, and I'll try to keep the combination under, say, 15 minutes. First, a quick correction. VBS has been around longer than you think, Joe. It's been around since the 19th century. Standardized curriculums have been around since the 20s, and that's probably something I'll get back to when we talk about that. But first, let's talk a little bit about Green Lantern and Deadpool. Because, as you said, you gave a good justification of why you think about Green Lantern as theologically you and your attachment to Hal Jordan, which I already mentioned. Yes, I agree. The womanizing isn't true, but pretty much the rest of it is spot on. You gotta admit. Wade Wilson for me. Let's first get out of the way. I do not want to be the old Vikings quarterback from the 80s and 90s, who I think continued in the league for years and years as a journeyman after that. Raiders, Cowboys, a few other places he was. No interest in being him. Do not mean him at all whenever Joe says Wade Wilson. We're talking about Wade Wilson Deadpool. Again, the name is iffy because there's some writers that wrote him as not Wade Wilson and others who wrote him as Wade Wilson. As the character himself says, it all depends on which writer you like better. And that's the same way with me. It all depends on which version of me you like better. I can be the extremely theological person. I can be extremely scientific. I can be extremely geeky. I can be extremely jock-related. This is just the part and parcel that is this weird, multifaceted me. And because of that, I think that's the starting point for where I see myself as a Deadpool Wade Wilson. You don't want to be Wade Wilson Deadpool. Let's just say Deadpool the rest of this time. You don't want to be Deadpool. No one wants to be Deadpool. No one in their right mind could want to be Deadpool. You just kind of become that type of character. It happens over time. It happens due to trauma. It happens due to things that happen in your life and other scarring that takes place. You just become this character who's kind of mercenary-ish, not necessarily out for themselves, but yes, the main thought process is, I've got to take care of what needs to be taken care of. I am hired to do a job. I am here to do something. I have a purpose and a point, but it's assigned by an outside source. That, in a lot of ways, also describes my theological viewpoint. I have a purpose and a point, but I have very little control over how that happens. In the sense that, at my best, I am acting as God's agent. I am acting on a call from God. That is where I'm starting my theology. I agree with you completely with Green Lantern and creation being a very important part, and that's a great theological point, because being made in God's image means that we have that creation ability. We have that ability to create that God does. That exhausting creation that you speak of is something that we're capable of as humans. I find that what they would call divine spark, or I call it, just use image of God that's within us, is that. It is this creation, ability to create, this ability to make this world the way it is now, how we've come up with this great expansive change in scientific knowledge and how we search for these things and looking for answers. This desire to be creative is what makes us like God. And yet, we're also called, in the same early scriptures, the stewards of creation. And that's where I get my Wade Wilson piece from, is I'm here because I'm hired, in a sense, to do this. I've been brought to this earth to do a certain set of things. And I am going to follow the orders in which I am given. Those orders can be subject to change. We see that a lot in Deadpool's comics. Oh, well, here's so-and-so now who's giving me this, and what I thought I was going to do, I'm no longer going to do. Instead of, like, working for this guy and eventually helping out Norman Osborn. I'm now going to work for this other guy and go about trying to kill Norman Osborn. Yet the mission is still the same whenever you really look at it. Or, hey, I've got a head telling me what to do of myself as a zombie. I need to get him to this guy. No, I need to take her to this guy. No, I need just to get him to another dimension completely. Well, it changes. That's a process of discernment. It's a process of faithfulness. That's a very important piece of my theology. Also, as I said, this is a character that has a lot of scarring. A lot of the things he doesn't necessarily remember fully. I have issues with that. I don't necessarily know my past perfectly anymore. There are stories I remember, and there are stories I don't. And there are things I've been told by my friends and by my family that I believe is truth, and I work with them. And I think we all have that to some extent. I know it's a large part of me. I know a large part of me is, as you said, Asperger's. I'm also a diabetic. I have this type of scarring. I have a body that's been beat up from years of sports. As I sit here in my ankle brace. This is a large part of who I am. I am also going to go wherever and use whatever tools that I can. What makes Deadpool such a successful mercenary and such a great character is he's chaotic. He is a chaotic character. He is often a chaotic neutral character. He's not picking sides. He's not for this team or for this team. He's just trying to do what he was hired to do. However that comes about, whatever that means, that's what he's doing. So, and he'll do it by any means necessary. Here, I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to use swords. I'm going to use language. I'm going to use lots of things that he has the ability to do. He's not the best at any one thing. There's no one thing that you go over the comic book world and go, this is what Deadpool is great at. No, he is diverse. He is jack of all trades, master of none, though oftentimes better than the master of one. One of my favorite quotes. And I think that's very much of who I am as well. And I think it's important to realize that. And he also plays into the whole chosen fear piece that you talk about with Green Lantern. Green Lantern is very overcoming fear. Wade Wilson Deadpool is very much using fear. It's very much who I am, what I have, whatever I am at this moment, whatever I'm doing at this moment is how I'm going to do it. Whatever that looks like, however that works. That's what we're going to do, and that's what's important. He is, though, the one issue that will be a struggle for me theologically is that he is in a lot of ways a loner. He is out on his own, and you're right. Community is an important thing. We're not in this alone. We are in this in a community. I would argue that there's a piece of Deadpool that has that, but it's not a strong piece. And I think that's an important thing to admit and to realize that that's where kind of the theological piece falls apart a bit, but it always does when we compare ourselves to superheroes. Let's be serious, none of us can quite be what we want to be. And for that matter, none of the heroes are all that perfect either, but they have kind of the extremism of who we are. So that's a large part of my view on the whole Deadpool thing, and I do appreciate what you bring to the table as far as Green Lantern goes. There's a lot of truth in what you said regarding conditional and unconditional love and those things. So that's why I look at myself as Wade Wilson, and that's into part one of this. I'll come back and discuss more about BBS and theology in the next post.